Hey guys, so I want to start at the beginning and talk briefly about the fundamentals of art and design. Most of you watching will already have heard of these and been training yourself in some or all of these, and you might be wondering why bother with something so basic, especially when I'm focused on environment design. Well, from my own experience, I've found that no matter how advanced or developed I think I'm getting, there's always room to improve my work just by consciously thinking about, developing, and applying fundamentals in new and different ways in each and every piece that I do. It's not about resting on my laurels and thinking that I've got it all figured out. No, it's a constant evolution. So, for those of you earlier on in your learning journey, you might feel completely overwhelmed having to think about all of these different fundamentals as you work. It's definitely like a juggling act where you're running between 10 different plates on sticks trying to keep them all spinning. Environment design, especially, tends to use more of these fundamentals at the same time. So, don't worry, it will be completely normal to feel overwhelmed. But just keep at building your knowledge and uh, adding to your skills and practicing, and it will definitely start to get easier. And for the more advanced of you who might be watching this, after achieving a certain level, I think it's quite easy to fall into a trap of thinking you don't ever need to think about these fundamentals anymore. And what I've found is the exact opposite is true. I don't believe there's ever a point in time where you can say finally you have achieved total mastery of any single fundamental. If you are hitting plateaus in your work, going back to the basics with intent can often give you new insight and catapult you into the next level. And so that's why it's always important to not only keep these in mind, but to actively apply thought in how to use these in a targeted way in your work. Knowledge alone is nothing without direct application. Now, I don't want to go into a lot of detail on each of these because there are much better resources out there, but I really do want to get an overview and put them all in context and maybe highlight some of the ones that I think are most important when it comes to environment design, because we'll always be referring to them to solve particular problems that come up in our work. So now let's have a look at this image that I've had on screen for a while. I found it online and it gives a very good overview of the elements and principles of design. It's split into two columns. The ones on the left are the basic tools that we have at our disposal to do any piece of artwork. The ones on the right are the principles of design, and these are the different ways in which you can use our tools in order to evoke certain feelings and bring certain expression into our work. The ones on the left, the elements, tend to be much more clearly documented and technical, and there's a lot of resources out there on how to study and practice these. The ones on the right, the principles of design, I think tend to work on a more intuitive and personal way to the artist. These develop as the artist develops, and it's not exactly clear, and there's not really resources out there that teach you necessarily how to go about building these things into your work. So it's a little bit more nebulous about how to use these principles in your work. So let's look at the elements of design. Now, I don't want to go through these item by item. Suffice to say that there are some very important fundamentals in this list that get picked out quite obviously. There are form and space, which also includes perspective and value. These are things that most student artists will be very aware they have to work on. Color and texture, of course, are very important as well, as is line. But I really want to sort of focus on shape. Now, shape doesn't often get talked about when it comes to resources for learning how to build up your fundamentals, and yet I think it's an absolutely crucial element to build in order to enhance your design skills. You need to be able to think about how shape interacts and what shapes do and how to use them and manipulate them in order to create the effects that you want in your design and in your work. So shape is something that we're going to be talking about a lot of in the in the coming weeks. So moving on to the principles of design, there's pattern, contrast, emphasis, balance, proportion, scale, harmony, rhythm, and movement. Now, many of these seem to be self-explanatory, but what I'd like to bring to your attention is contrast. Now, I believe contrast is highly important and is a very effective tool when used to be able to create powerful pieces. And this isn't purely just contrast in terms of a value sense of dark versus light, but you can have contrast in almost any aspect of your image. And that's why contrast is exceedingly powerful. And it's incredibly important that when we're thinking about our pieces, that we're always thinking about the different ways that we can use contrast. So that's also something that I will be focusing on in another video. So let's pause for a moment and have a look at this list and see if there's anything that might be missing off it. As students, as self-learners, as artists who've been doing it for a while, we're all incredibly focused on composition. We're always told we can improve our composition. We're always thinking of ways of how to make our compositions better and stronger and have more impact. So why isn't it a fundamental? Well, the reason it's not a fundamental is because it's actually the combination of both the elements and the principles of design that go into creating the composition. So it's how the artist tends to use these various principles and the various elements in order to create something that comes together to create a powerful image. Now, I thought it was very important to state that very obviously and specifically, because often I think we can get confused by thinking that composition is a very singular kind of thing. When you're looking up, Googling composition, for example, you'll come up with all sorts of handy, very easy to remember guides, such as the rule of thirds for picking your focal points, or triangular compositions, or L-shaped compositions, or circular ones, or the fact that diagonal lines are very dynamic in composition. So there are always these rules to help you simplify and sift through and help you understand composition. But it's, I think, important to realize that underneath all these, we're actually looking at the principles of design and the elements of design. So how do we use pattern and contrast and balance and harmony and rhythm and movement in a way that serves our work? And also, when you're building your knowledge and your skills and your practice on these particular principles, then that actually allows you to break those rules of composition that everyone knows about and keeps spouting. So, if you want to just do what everyone else does, for sure you can get it to work, but the more you understand and think about the actual fundamentals behind them, then you'll be able to start to break them, and break them in very successful ways, more and more. So that, I just thought, was something that I wanted to put out there more specifically. Again, as a reminder that no matter how much we think we know about a certain topic, just looking at the fundamentals and trying to apply specific ones or understand something a little bit more about them will actually help us, propel us into becoming better artists as we go along. So that's basically all I wanted to say about these basic fundamentals of design. Keep this image handy. You can always refer to it when you're doing your pieces, and maybe think more specifically about how to apply these in your work, and maybe how to study these in other artists' work. So thank you. I hope that summary was useful for you, and we'll look forward to more videos where I talk about these in maybe a little bit more detail. Thanks.